I'm Naomi Freed. I am delighted to be participating in the healthetia conference today, and welcome to all of you that have tuned in. I am delighted and looking forward to speaking with you about how innovation happens in healthcare. I've been on the front lines of healthcare innovation for over 15 years. Today, I am the founder and CEO of Health Innovation Strategies, a boutique advisory firm that specializes in innovation program design and optimization and digital health strategy for large healthcare organizations. By way of background, I was the first vice president of innovation and advanced technology at Kaiser Permanente. I was also then the first chief innovation officer at Boston Children's Hospital, where I launched the Innovation Acceleration Program. And then I moved to Biogen, where I was their first vice president of innovation and external partnership, responsible for the innovation beyond the molecule strategy. Well, with that background, let's go ahead and launch into the slides I've got prepared for you today. I am passionate about innovation, and I really believe that now more than ever, we can use innovation to bring about the change that we need in healthcare, lowering costs, improving outcomes, enhancing the patient and clinician experience. And, many sectors are already involved with innovation. Obviously startups, but also farmers, pharma, and providers. And today I'm going to share with you my perspective from over 15 years in the field of how innovation happens. So let me just take one more minute and tell you a little bit more about health innovation strategies. I've been building innovation programs and working in digital health and telehealth for many years. And I really founded Health Innovation Strategies to more broadly share the expertise that I've developed. Our firm today specializes in innovation program design and optimization and telehealth strategy for large and complex healthcare organizations. Our clients include a range of healthcare stakeholders, from providers to pharma to medtech firms and payers. Innovation and digital health really are my passion, and I'm delighted to discuss innovation with this amazing worldwide audience today. So I love this cartoon. It says, this really is an innovative approach, but I'm afraid we can't consider it. It's never been done before. Well, goodness, the whole point of innovation is to do things that haven't been done before. And the truth is, innovation is one of the most frequently used and misunderstood terms in business and healthcare today. So, well, what is innovation then? That is a question that when I was Chief Innovation Officer at Boston Children's Hospital, I heard frequently and obviously needed to have an answer to almost every day. So I'd like to start our conversation off about talking about what innovation is. So if you go to the dictionary, the definition is to try out new ideas, and the antonym is to stagnate. So let's unpack this definition and discuss some of the important attributes of innovation. So first of all, risk is involved. It's a key element. And in fact, there's also failure. Failure is not always a bad thing. It's actually a learning opportunity. And organizations that want to have a thriving innovation culture need to create a culture where it's acceptable to try new things and to fail. And people sometimes confuse new with innovative. And just because something is new doesn't mean it's innovative. When one of my clients was deploying a new electronic medical record, that was new for them, but it wasn't innovation. The product was going to work, and there was no real risk or uncertainty. Well, other than maybe how long it was going to take, or how long, if everyone would ultimately become comfortable with it. Another thing about innovation is that it can produce different things. You can innovate to create new medical devices, new inventions, new business models or processes. And there's also different types of innovation. There's incremental, small-scale innovation where things change a little bit. And then there's disruptive, paradigm-shifting innovation, where you often need a new ecosystem and you may have new sales channels, new business models. And the one thing I'll also say about innovation is what it's not. It's not just operational enhancement or project improvement. These generally don't have that element of risk and uncertainty that is so important in our definition of innovation. So let's take a minute to talk about why firms in all industries focus on innovation. Well, innovation is really a business imperative, and there's probably four main reasons for that. First of all, businesses often use innovation, both incremental and disruptive, to support or enhance their business products and services, and even to move into adjacent business opportunities and create new business models. And Amazon's a great example of a company that had an innovative offering. Initially, it provided online sales of books, and then continued to innovate with one-click shopping and Prime Now, which offered online sales of other products and services. And most recently, now they offer web services. Innovation can also enhance and support a company's reputation. And being recognized as an innovative company can be a great differentiator to support your brand and to drive sales. And Apple is a great example of this. Their reputation around innovation is tremendous. Think about all the excitement that surrounds Apple every time they release a new product. And, I don't know if the sixth iPhone was really that different from the fifth iPhone, but boy, people were excited about it because Apple has a reputation for innovation, and folks will line up to buy a product from an innovative company. Some organizations are interested in supporting internal innovation for the benefit that it brings to their culture. Giving employees an opportunity to become innovators, to take the problems that they see and help find solutions, can be extremely gratifying for employees. Innovation programs can improve employee satisfaction, morale, even employee recruitment and retention. And so this is a particularly popular reason to build innovation programs among nonprofit companies. And enhancing the innovation culture was the mission of our innovation program that I built at Boston Children's Hospital. And finally, innovation also helps firms prepare for their future. It can provide long-range strategy. Innovation can drive and support business model transformation. And IBM is a great case example of this. They transformed themselves from basically a dying hardware company to a global business service company focused on data analytics. And hopefully they're poised for another transformation soon. So, what happens if your company doesn't innovate? Well, remember, let's go back to our definition. The antonym, if you're not innovating, you're stagnating. And there are many companies that have gone out of business because they failed to innovate. The products and services were displaced by newer, cheaper, better solutions. You know some of these brands: Kodak, Borders, BlackBerry, Blockbuster. Maybe you shouldn't give your company names that start with B. I don't know. Polaroid. Basically, companies that generally don't innovate often die. So how do you innovate in healthcare? How does innovation happen? Well, while I was the Vice President of Innovation at Kaiser Permanente, I developed the idea of the innovation lifecycle to help explain how innovation happens in a service environment. This innovation lifecycle is not a product development lifecycle. A product company like 3M might look similar, but what's important about the innovation lifecycle is the 6 steps and the gap. And let's dive a little bit more deeply into each of these steps. So the first step is initiation. It's an important step, but it's not hard. It's where you identify the problem, you envision a solution, and you define the sort of vision and objective for innovating. And you could be focused on a grassroots problem or a strategic problem. But it's really important that innovations start with a problem, not with a solution and go looking for a problem. And at this stage, it's also good to consider the scope and resources that are available to you. The next step, once you've had a vision, is to start coming up with ideas. We call this phase ideation. And sadly, some people are confused and think that ideation is innovation. It's not. It's just a piece of the whole cycle. And there's a lot of ways to innovate. If we were all sitting together, I'd ask you who's ever brainstormed, and many of you would raise your hand. But I also coach innovators that another great way to come up with ideas is to consider borrowing things from other industries or even competitors. You don't have to solve a problem from scratch every time. One of my favorite examples of an inspiration for a healthcare solution that came from somewhere else was from my time as Chief Innovation Officer at Boston Children's Hospital. While I was there, Nurse Karen wanted a better way to rewarm the babies that had been cooled down for cardiac surgery. And after surgery was over, they needed to get their body temperature back up to normal. And Nurse Karen didn't feel that the water baths and the blankets that were available were sufficient. So she came up with the idea of a hat because she knew that we lose 40% of our body heat through our head. But what kind of hat? So she tried some knitted hats. They didn't work so well. They tended to fall off the baby and kind of often got in the way. And it was actually while watching a marathon, and she noticed that the runners were being given mylar blankets to warm up. And she thought, that might be the material for me. And she came up with this ingenious design that you see here of a hat, which is made out of mylar. Initially, actually, it lies flat on the operating table until it's needed, so it's out of the way. And then it goes on turban style at the end of the operation and attached with Velcro above the baby's forehead, stays on snugly. And this was really a very successful innovation for Nurse Karen, for Boston Children's Hospital, which got a patent, and really a wonderful example of a terrific step and thoughtful ideation. So coming out of ideation, you harvest your best ideas and you move into the pilot phase. This is where you actually test the new idea. You build a prototype, a functional mock-up, and it's at this stage that you need to have clear metrics, not moving goalposts. And if you're going to fail, which will happen, this is where it's going to happen at this time. But failing when you're innovating and failing early is actually a form of success. And one of my favorite examples is from my days as Vice President of Innovation at Kaiser Permanente. So Kaiser Permanente nurses wanted to improve the medication administration process. There was too much competition around the existing machines that were dispensing the medication. So sitting around a conference table and brainstorming, we came up with the idea of a computer cart and that we would add a medication drawer. This seemed like a great idea, but within 20 minutes of leaving the conference room and going and building a functional prototype, we saw this idea was not going to work. Why? Well, these computer carts had been a bit heavy to start with, but the nurses were managing to push and pull them around for their 8-hour shift. But once we added 25 pounds of medication, we had something unusable. It was so heavy, it was like a boat anchor. So we scrapped that idea, went back to the drawing board, and came up with something completely early. But by failing early and cheaply with just the prototype, we saved the organization potentially millions of dollars it could have spent outfitting all of the hospitals. Fast, early failure is a great form of success. So now in the ideal world, a pilot is simply translated into broad operations, and people who've tested a good idea can convince others to adopt them. But who lives in that ideal world where people quickly and easily adopt new ideas? We don't. We live in a world where change is not embraced. And I think this cartoon has it right. People are too busy for innovation, and maybe it's sometimes a little bit scared. So what we see in the real world is that it's hard to transition from pilot to operations. Scaling up a good idea and getting broad adoption can be really challenging. This adoption barrier, this chasm between the pilot stage and operationalization is what I call the operationalization gap. I coined the term operationalization gap, or OGAP for short, to describe this challenge in adopting new ideas. Which organizations face OGAPs? Well, it tends to be big organizations, not small startups, particularly organizations with lots of divisions and departments and diffuse leadership. And it's less of a problem in hierarchical organizations like the military. How do you close the OGAP? Well, you can engage leadership, leverage resources, bring around and use change management tools. But actually, the best thing to close the O gap is to recognize it and plan for it. So I advise my innovators to get the operational folks involved with their project early on in the life cycle. Having these key gatekeepers involved in initiation, ideation, and piloting makes all the difference. Getting key stakeholders engaged early more than anything else will help shrink the O gap. I like this cartoon. It says, here's our plan, think of an innovation, implement it, sell the other departments on it, and take it to the marketplace. You really have to recognize that getting internal buy-in is absolutely critical for innovation. So once you've crossed the O gap, you're on to operationalization. This is where the organization realizes the full value of the new idea. But that's not the last step. It's actually, we move on to optimization. And this is where the innovation's in the hands of the end users. They're fine-tuning it, customizing it, making it work for them. And then finally, no life cycle goes on forever. At some point, needs change, workflow is different, maybe there's new, cheaper technology available, and it's time to obsolete or repeat. And then it can be a little tricky figuring out how and when to sunset a solution and to replace it with a new innovation and start the process over again. And I like this little cartoon here. It says, and this light lets you know when the camera is obsolete. Wouldn't it be great if we had that on all of our innovations? So I hope you now have a better understanding of what innovation is, why firms choose to innovate, and how the innovation life cycle works. The innovation life cycle can be a really powerful framework for illuminating innovation in the healthcare setting. For innovators, familiarity with the innovation life cycle can be really great. Understanding each step, and especially the O gap, can help innovators know what to expect and how to plan and prepare and perhaps be more successful in this tumultuous ride we call innovation. And in addition, the innovation life cycle is useful to organizations in thinking about how to allocate innovation resources. So it's been my pleasure speaking with you. Here's my firm's contact information if you'd like to connect with us. I also tweet frequently about innovation and digital health. And I want to thank you all so much for your time and attention and for tuning in. And now I'm going to turn back to Thomas to answer some questions that you may have. Thanks so much.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. Very interesting. And we have some comments and questions as well. So yeah, I would like to start, like, for example, Eric Johansson, he wants to say, like, how likely companies want to innovate or just buy a startup for innovation?
That's a great question. So some companies are interested in very specific product innovation, and sometimes the best way to get an innovative product is to buy what someone else has done, so to acquire a startup. But many other companies are also interested in internal innovation, in accessing the ideas their employees have, in developing a way to solve the problems they see internally and tap into the resources they have, in which case they will be going through this process within the organization. So there's no one way to access innovation. There are many ways: internal, external, partnerships, and they all have benefits and they all serve different purposes.
Okay, I think with this, I just saw the question from Anjali. He or she said, where shall innovation happen, inside or outside? I think you explained it perfectly and showed it as well. So thanks for this comment. And I think, oh, sorry, Naomi?
I was just going to add, you know, a company can't let innovation only happen around it. It has to engage in innovation, or as I said earlier, the company will die. So either bring in the innovation, develop it internally, but don't be left behind and fail to innovate.
Absolutely. And I think this is a very comment or question as well. What do you think about the non-healthcare companies entering into the market, like Apple and Amazon? This is, I believe, yeah, definitely a good comment, no?
I think it's a great question. I think that these companies face some challenges because of the complexity of the healthcare ecosystem and environment. And you really have to understand the dynamics, the way doctors work, the way patients engage in order to be successful in the healthcare arena. So I think that these companies need to be thoughtful as they try to enter the healthcare sector and tap into, ideally partner with providers, with pharma. The other caution I would sound is that I think it's important to start with the problem when you're innovating, not with a solution. And so I think coming with a device or tool and saying, what can I solve in healthcare is a little bit backward. You need to be listening to the patients, listening to the providers, looking at where we have issues and challenges, and then bringing a solution to it. And trust me, we have a lot of challenges in healthcare.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we can take a last one, and this is from Melissa. Just let me show it on the stream. Like, thank you, Naomi, great topic. How do medical device companies who are making a complex product move innovation through the cycle? If it's not a customer need yet, what are some of the approaches? Perhaps you can give it like in a 20-second answer.
So I think medical device companies are continuously engaged in innovation. They are attempting to solve their patients' needs. And I think what you're alluding to is they're also trying to anticipate what the needs are and how they can potentially incrementally improve a device or come up with a radically new solution. But it is a longer, more complex process given the regulatory oversight.
Absolutely. So the time is already up. So thank you very much, Naomi, and thanks for having these comments and questions. And yes, we are going to send a replay, all the contact information where you can contact Naomi for further discussions. It was a great pleasure having you with us. And yeah, talk to you soon again, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.